Are you or were you in a cult? It's not a question I ever thought I would be asking myself, because nobody sets out to join a cult. And in a cult there's often two parts. There's the outer part and then the inner secretive circle. And you might be in an organisation where you're on the outer, and from that perspective it all seems pretty good, because you haven't got to the point yet where you're in the secretive inner circle where they know things that the ordinary folk don't know. On the inner circle of your organisation, your beloved leader might be abusing his students, just like my beloved leader was, because we didn't know anything about it. When I finally discovered the truth, thanks to the people who spoke up, a bunch of them, I realised that even the organisation wasn't what I thought it was. The way Rigpa handled the situation after the revelations of abuse by Sogu Rinpoche came out, the way they handled it just got creepier and creepier. And I began to see that, something's not really right here. They're not behaving the way I would think a Buddhist community would behave. And so I started to look into the cult issue. The cult word can mean something quite neutral, just a new religious movement or a very small religious movement. And that can be, quite fine. The aspect of the word cult that concerns us here is the destructive cult word. And what makes it destructive? Well, when the leader's abusing people, that's pretty destructive. That by itself will tell you it's a destructive cult. It's obviously destructive to the people that are being abused. Even those who don't think they're being abused. Even those who think that their philosophy tells them that there's some greater purpose for their suffering. Well, that's fine. But if you're being smashed in the face, you're still being smashed in the face. You might think it's fine, but it's not fine, is it? Not really. Nobody should be hitting people in the name of religious practice. It's just really off. Anyway, I have with me, so that I won't waffle, a bunch of points laid out by Jayanti Tam, author of Cartwheels and Asari, a memoir of growing up in a cult. This comes from a Huffington Post article, and it's a pretty good checklist of the kind of points that you need to look for if you're trying to work out whether you're in a cult or not. Number 1, the leader and group are always correct, and anything the leader does can be justified. Well now, that's certainly true of Rigpa. Whatever the leader does can and is justified. The huge justification is that the emotional abuse that anyone who went to a retreat saw was justified as kindness. Yes, we were all taught that what we were seeing was the greatest compassion. Why? Presumably because our leader was a crazy wisdom master, and that since he was enlightened, he could see that this was for the benefit of the person. Now, he might really believe that. People might really believe that. I really believed it until I realised that this wasn't just a little bit of grumpiness, that this was systematic abuse happening here. I just only happened to see it with the occasional person once a year. It never occurred to me it might be going on day after day after day after day for the people that were close to him. So anything that he did, he was always correct. And that was just from my outer perspective, on the outer ring. For those up close, wow. He was never wrong. No way. And everything that he did most certainly could and was justified. As far as the group always being correct, that's not so much now. They have realised in their not the last communication with the Sangha, but the one before, they admitted they hadn't dealt with things particularly well. But before that, yeah, you could, put stuff in the feedback box, but nothing ever changed. And that leads on to number 2. Questions, suggestions, or critical inquiry are forbidden. In Rigpa, Critical inquiry of the leader is forbidden once you've chosen him to be your teacher. You're just not allowed to criticize. Simple as that. If you're found criticizing him, it's considered that you don't have enough devotion, your pure perception is lacking, and therefore you're a failure as a spiritual practitioner. And it'll also be deemed that you're not suitable for the highest teachings. So, yep, definitely critical inquiry was downright forbidden. Questions and suggestions. Okay, there was a feedback box. Yep, and you could put stuff in there, but to get a question to Sogyal Rinpoche was extremely difficult. It was often edited to such a degree that by the time it was read out, you didn't recognize it as your own. That's if you were lucky enough to have it actually get to him and get some sort of an answer. Mostly you were fobbed off by a senior instructor trying to give you an answer, which even if it wasn't adequate, never went any further. It was very hard to get questions answered. And the feedback boxes at retreat were kind of a joke, because I remember people coming up to me and saying, I only hear good stuff. It's like I put in something saying that actually I don't want to hear all this feedback from people, all this gushing stuff, saying how wonderful he is. I don't want to sit here for 2 hours while it's all read out. I put that into the feedback box, and the next day and the next day and the next day, all I hear is more of this stuff. Yeah, well, that's pretty much how it was. And people would say to me, am I the only one that finds some of this a bit dodgy? You know, am I the only person that put something in that feedback box that wasn't completely adoring? No, they weren't, because I don't know why, but people tended to talk to me about such things. Perhaps because I was a little bit more open to it than other people. Anyway, point being that you could put whatever you liked into the feedback box, but the only thing that came out of that feedback box, and the only thing that ever got to Sogyal Rinpoche, and the only thing that ever got read to the people sitting in the retreat, were all these wonderful accolades by people saying just how magnificent Sogyal Rinpoche was. And of course that's all you hear, so, you know, it sort of encourages you to think the same way, and you tend to think that if, you know, maybe I'm missing something. It's like, oh, all these people think he's so wonderful, you know, maybe I'm missing something here. Number 3, members incessantly scramble with cramped schedules and activities full of largely meaningless work based on the leader's agenda. So, definitely incessantly scrambling with cramped schedules and activities. We were supposed to always go to all the sessions in the retreats. If we didn't go, we had to go to catch-up sessions. There wasn't a lot of time. I never went to all the sessions because I just simply couldn't manage it. It was just too exhausting. When people complained that they were overwhelmed by the amount of material that was being, you know, constantly thrown at them, they were told to, you know, learn how to handle the overwhelm. You know, it's always the student's problem. Yeah, never the lama's problem, never the people running the retreats problem. No, it was always the student's problem. We just had to get familiar and comfortable with overwhelm and not let it overwhelm us, which is fine, you know. There's wisdom in all of this, but I'm just looking at it in terms of these 10 points. We all saw the people running the retreat run off their feet. We all knew that they might get phoned up at any time of the day or night. We watched them sitting in a teaching session, calling someone on the other side of the world and waking them up at 2 a.m. This was common practice. People didn't get a lot of sleep. We knew all of this, but they signed up for it. So, you know, who are we to worry? That was the thinking. Meaningless work. Well, you know, I did a lot of work for Rigpa and I never thought of it as being meaningless. No, the idea behind it was that we were, you know, spreading the Dharma. We were educating people. It was a great merit-building exercise, and much of it was. But at the inner level, I have heard stories of people being sent off to do some activity. They will spend months working on this, doing exactly what Sogyal Rinpoche asked them to do, and then when they come and present it to him, the whole thing's completely thrown away. And they have to face the fact that their whole, maybe months and months of hard work is completely been wasted. It happened. Number 4, followers are meant to believe that they are never good enough. Now, on the surface you go, well, that's not true. Buddhism believes that, our Buddha nature is as good as any Buddha's Buddha nature, which means it's as good as our Lama's Buddha nature. And that was said to us many times. But it wasn't a problem with the actual teachings. No, it's the way the teachings were interpreted and the way they were embodied, or rather not embodied. Because what we saw was not somebody respecting the Buddha nature in another person. No, what we saw was somebody putting somebody down. I was never the recipient of abuse, but I did see abuse. I didn't actually realise it was abuse, or it didn't start filtering through into my brain until one night I went on a retreat to a special teaching session for the Dzogchen Mandala. What happened in that session was that Sogyal Rinpoche spent at least an hour laying into this girl about something that she'd done wrong. Now, instead of just telling her and then moving on, he went over and over and over the same things for an hour. She was in a terrible, blubbering mess. She was obviously traumatized and upset. I'm sitting there with 100 other people and I'm going, I can't see any teaching in this for me. And this is after 20 years of me trying very hard to see teachings in this kind of thing. Now, I'd never seen it so extreme before. I'd seen a little bit of grumping here and there, and I'd been able to go, oh yeah, I kind of get that. I see he's pointing out that, this person could have worked more efficiently. Fine, he's not doing it in a very nice way, but, that's just him, part of the package deal. But this particular night, I looked around at everyone, and they're sitting there with blank faces. Nobody wants to show any reaction, because if you do, it means you're not letting go, and that means that your spiritual practice is not really very good. And maybe you shouldn't be in the Dzogchen Mandala anyway, because by the time you get there, you're supposed to be able to see whatever Sogyal Rinpoche does as absolutely, perfectly fine, enlightened activity. Well, in this particular night, I'm sitting there thinking, this doesn't look like enlightened activity to me. And I'm feeling kind of numb here. What's going on? It seemed like it wasn't even me sitting there, because how could I, somebody who feels so strongly about abuse being a terrible thing, someone who, as a school teacher, I cannot let any child get away with bullying. I'm sitting there watching this bully abuse this girl, and I'm looking at myself and going, no, what's happened to me? This is not who I am. I finally got up and walked out, wishing I'd done so sooner. And when I followed up on this the next day, the girl assured me that she was all right, but before I could delve into it detail, she rushed off because, of course, she's busy as busy can be. What I saw there was not somebody honouring somebody else's Buddha nature. What I saw was somebody putting somebody down. And it seemed that no matter what she said, nothing she could say would make her ever good enough. And from my talking to people who've been in the inner circle of Rigpa, people have said, and what I've seen is that after years and years of this kind of treatment, they've been completely crushed. Now, I don't mean their ego, their grasping itself. I mean their basic healthy sense of self has been so put down that they are completely diminished. It wasn't cutting through their ego. It was actually solidifying their ego. It was solidifying their ego into, I'm not good enough. That became their concept of themselves. it wasn't breaking through anything. I mean, maybe it did for some people. I know one person told me, assured me, that she had experienced a transformative moment. And I also had experienced transformative moments with Sogyal Rinpoche. Not whilst being, abused in any way, but the fact that, people can experience transformative moments is perhaps more to do with that person than with what's necessarily being dished out to them. I can look at the sky and experience a transformative moment, so, so I don't think the fact that some people experience it as transformative actually means that it's okay when a lot of people didn't experience it that way at all. And from my reading, it seems to me that all these people who've had to go and have therapy, they felt like they were never good enough. So yeah, I would say number 4, yeah, tick. Number 5, required dependency upon the leader and group for even the most basic problem solving. Now again, if you're on the outer edges of an organisation and you live at home and you have a normal job and your life is not completely taken up with this organisation and this working for the leader, then you may still be able to have normal problem solving abilities, no problem. But if you've been removed from your family, you're living in a close in the inner circle, you're with the leader a lot of the time, if not all the time, you're used to doing exactly what he says and only what he says, to the point where you have to write down his instructions word by word, and you are told to check with the other people who were there listening to make sure that you heard exactly, so that you do exactly what he does. And you're terrified that you'll get it wrong, because if you don't do exactly what he says, then you're going to get yelled at or hit or any of the other things. And some people said to me, even if you did follow it absolutely to the letter, you still could be yelled at for getting it wrong. And you never had any comeback. There was no way that you could say, but this is what you said to me. He's a scary guy. No, they weren't thinking for themselves. They're doing what they're told. Complete and utter obedience. Yep. Now, when all of this fell apart and Sogyal Rinpoche departed, some people said to me, these main people, they're lost. They don't know what to do. Why? Because they haven't been making decisions. They've been with them 30, 40 years, some of these people. They're not making decisions for themselves. They don't know how to do it anymore. Number 6, reporting on members for disobedient actions or thoughts is mandated and rewarded. Now again, you wouldn't see this on the outer level, but I had an experience where something that I'd done got reported to somebody above me. It was also reported to me by people in the inner circle that yes, people did report on your mind state. And there were times when I would be sitting in retreat and Rinpoche would get someone up and say, tell us about this person. And someone in the inner circle or in the upper echelons of management would stand up and they would say something about this person. And then he'd get someone else to say something about this person. We weren't allowed to just be nice. No, they had to, pull out all the person's problems as well. I was also told that people were asked to hack other people's emails. Yeah, I found that a bit shocking. And this has come to me from actual people I trust, people from right within the organisation. So, yeah, there is a certain reporting of members. Something even closer to home on this point is that in August last year, after the letter by the 8 that was written detailing the abuses by Sogyal Rinpoche came out, my Sangha instituted a friend mapping system. I don't know how far it got, but the very fact that someone suggested it made me cringe. I was actually asked to help do it. And I was in the process of leaving at the time, and I said, why are you doing this? The answer was, oh, so we could fully care for people. We want to know who their friends are, so we know who's talking to who. That's caring? Is that caring, or is that spying? Is that making sure that we know who's talking to someone who we know has got views that are a little bit negative? So we know who to say what to, so we know who to kind of push out and sideline. I don't know. Personally, I couldn't see any reason why it would be positive. But there you go. Friendship mapping it was called, and it was considered to be a good thing. But it can also be reporting on members. Monetary, sexual or servile labour is expected to gain promotion. Well, that's true. I mean, if you wanted to be, up in the upper echelons of Rigpa, you did have to work your guts out, that's for sure. And, well, we all know now about the sexual labour. And, of course, if you paid lots of money, then you could, you could get to set up the front and have, special meetings with Rinpoche, all that kind of stuff. You might even get your questions answered. Yeah. It's certainly expected in order to gain promotion. And, really, when you look at the reports of the inner circle, it's downright slavery, really is. You've got people doing things that, when you think about all the money that's coming in, and you think about some of the people that were highly qualified in their field, why weren't they being paid? It's karma yoga. It's our offering. We're supposed to do it for free because it's good for us. It's our offering. And that's great until it's abused. Until that trust and that genuine desire to offer and to be of benefit is abused. It was certainly servile labour. Number 8, the outside world, often including family and friends, is presented as rife with impending catastrophe, evil and temptations. On the surface you'd look at that and go, no, we didn't have that in Rigpa. Until we got to the point of some people's negative perceptions of Sogyal Rinpoche and Rigpa. At that time, you might get a glimpse of something else. In 2012, when Mimi's story came out, detailing her sexual abuse, I went to a representing Rigpa session. And in this session, I heard for the very first time, that there had been any allegations of sexual assault or at all. I just never looked, I was so naive. What a sucker. In that session, we were presented with this idea that the people that had complained in the past, they were either, the words used were unstable, had mental problems, very, very angry people with a chip on their shoulder, or they were jealous, or they were a jilted lover. It was very much presented as if there was some kind of campaign to discredit Sogyal Rinpoche, as if it was foundless. And we had the sense that it was them against us, that we were the good guys and these were the bad guys who were basically, I thought they were being cyberbullies. Yeah, we were asked not to go online and check, because every time I hit registered on a website, it was going to make it easier to be found on Google, which meant people could find this information. Wait a minute, isn't that the information we want people to find? Yeah, it is. But I thought, oh no, I don't want to help people find these terrible lies about Rinpoche. That would be terrible. No, so I did what they said. I didn't go online and I didn't check. It wasn't until much later that I realised, through actual people that I knew friends that I trusted, that I knew were genuinely good-hearted people who would never make up anything like this, let alone stand up and say it publicly or privately, as it was initially, I realised that it was all true. All of it. Oh, man. So this outside world, us against them thing does exist. It does exist. And I'm going to jump here to number 10. Former members are shunned and perceived as hostile. Because it links in Rigpa, definitely. I imagine people are saying things like, oh, Talia's gone off. I wasn't allowed to go to the last Australian retreat. Yep, absolutely stopped from going. I was asked not to contact members. I was not allowed to return to Rigpa after I left. And that's my experience from the outer side. When I was in the inside, you know, people would leave and you'd never hear from them again. They simply disappeared. You'd never hear. And if you tried to find out why they'd gone, where they'd gone, and why they'd gone, you just met a blank wall. Anyone who was critical at all, you know, was definitely seen as evil in some degree or other. And even though the term evil wasn't used, you know, that was the kind of feeling that we were given. So, and back to number 9, recruitment of new members is designed to be purposefully upbeat and vague about the actual operations of the leader and the group. There's a glossy website. There's all the details, as you would expect, about all the wonderful things that Rigpa does. And why not? You know, they've got a service and they're trying to sell it. And on the surface, it's all lovely. It's all great. But when you sign up to become a mandala member, when you join the meditation mandala, are you given something that says, well, if you want the highest teachings, you're going to have to write something to Sogyal Rinpoche which tells him how devoted you are to him. You will have to accept that he's your teacher, that you will never criticize him, and that you will be absolutely obedient to him. No, I wasn't told that. No, it just kind of crept up on me, and I found myself doing these things that were required, you know, because they were required. And after you've been in something for a while, you know, you're sort of committed to it. And to then turn around and go, hang on, have I been committed to something, you know, that wasn't worth being committed to? And of course, on the surface, it all looks so good. And the teachings were real. The teachings themselves were beneficial. You know, it's only how they were put into practice where the problem came. So in that situation, you don't want to back out. You know, so you do what's required to get the highest teachings. And, you know, these Dzogchen teachings were dangled in front of us, you know, and in order to get them, you had to do certain things. And you had to, you know, see Sogyal Rinpoche as an enlightened Buddha. Well, you didn't have to, but, you know, if you didn't sort of look like you did, then, you know, it was like, oh, well, you know, that person, they don't have enough pure perception, and, you know, their devotion's lacking, and, you know, I don't think that they should be in the Dzogchen mandala, you know. And when we come to, you know, look over their things, and we talk to the people that know them, and, you know, to see whether they're suitable for these teachings or not, then, you know, we analyse all of these things. I was told Rigpa is only for students of Sogyal Rinpoche. Is that what they're telling you when you sign up for that course? Is that what they're telling you? Yeah, they're going to have lots of different teachings from different teachers now, but either I was told incorrectly or something's not being shared. Maybe I was lied to. I don't know. But it seems to me that the people that are still running it are, you know, still students of Sogyal Rinpoche, and apparently, since they haven't denounced any of the behaviour, they still think it's absolutely fine. So is that told to the people, the new people? I doubt it very much. I was told that new people were told that these allegations had been made. But that's different to saying, well, this is the actual situation. You know, you come and you join us, and, you know, you're joining a bunch of people who basically think that that kind of behaviour was fine because he's a crazy wisdom master. And we'll tell you what that means, you know, and it's all very logical and fine. No, that doesn't happen. So, yeah, the actual operations of the leader in the group are not explained. So that's the 10 points from there. I also grabbed another few points from somewhere else because they kind of, though they overlap, there are some extra ones. So unquestioning commitment to a domineering leader. Now, most of the things you'll read about cults, destructive cults, start with the leader thing. There's an extraordinary level of devotion, a blind devotion. Now, in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, Sogyal Rinpoche himself said that devotion was not supposed to be blind. But is that what we had in Rigpa? When people could watch and participate in the kind of behaviour that's outlined by the 8 letter writers and think that that's okay? Isn't that blind devotion? Wasn't my ability to sit there and watch what I saw, which was mild, wasn't that blind? Was I manipulated into thinking that something that was obviously not kind was kind? Could you call that brainwashing? You know, I wouldn't have thought it at the time. I thought, yeah, you know, because there's some truth in it. It's just that it was abused, twisted, all because we had unquestioning commitment to a domineering leader. People are scared of him. Very domineering. I used to say, nobody else can have an ego around here because, you know, I've got an ego that's big enough for all of us. Dissent and discussion discouraged. Well, I already mentioned that. Cult members lavish the leader in luxury. Yes, if we accept what was outlaid in the letter by the 8, that is definitely true. Polarisation of members, us against them mentality and secretive inner circles, most definitely. This inner circle was very hard to penetrate. If you wanted to get something to Rinpoche, a question or something, you had to rush out of the tent at the end and build up your courage to actually go and tap one of his attendants on the shoulder and say, excuse me, I want to get a question to Rinpoche, or could you? And they were very nice about it, they were. But they were hiding something. They were hiding something terrible. Rebellion against other sources of authority. This is the idea that our rules are above the rules of society, law, and so on. You know, in any situation where there's abuse, to think that any of that is okay means that you think that you're above society. It means that you think that the rules that govern your little sect are better than the law that governs our society. If you possibly think that any of that was okay, then yes, you have rebelled against the legal source of authority, and it's a cult marker. Now, alteration of personality. Okay, now again, that didn't happen to me. No, might happen to someone inside, but wait a minute. I found myself sitting there watching a bully at work, and I wasn't reacting the way I would normally react. Who was this person? How could I get to the point where I could sit there and watch this and feel nothing? Wait, I did feel something. I felt appalled. I felt horrified. I felt disgusted. But I was pushing it down. I realised then that something was wrong about the way I was dealing with this. That my letting go, I'm letting go, I'm letting go, I'm just letting go. Yes, the risings are coming and I'm letting them go. Wait a minute, I was not honouring the risings. I was not honouring my gut feeling that was telling me something terribly wrong was going on here. Was that an altered personality? Yeah, I wasn't different when I was at home, I was me, but somehow when I was on retreat, this is sort of daze, And I thought that kind of daze was just, nice and peaceful and stuff. And yes, it was to some degree, but, there's also trance states brought on by the guru stare. Now, if you don't know anything about that, just Google the guru stare or the guru trance state or something, and you'll learn that if you look at someone's face and you stare into their eyes for long enough, you go into a trance state. And that, leaders who have the devotion of all the people that are, sitting there watching them, staring at their face, they put the whole group into a trance state. Look at me. Look here. This is what we were told. We had to look at him. We had to keep our eyes on him. Oh boy. Read the cult material. That's what cult leaders do. Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh was very good at it, and he had those big hypnotic eyes. Yeah, so another cult marker. So there you go. Now, I'm not going to come to any kind of conclusion for you. I'm just reading through a bunch of pointers here, and I'm applying it to my own experience and to the experience of people that I've spoken to who were closer in to the heat, to the leader of Rigpa. And I'm just examining it. That's all I'm doing. Of course, I've read a lot more than just looked at these 10 points. And the more you read, the more you recognize the similarities. The more you realize that, yeah, it applies to a rather embarrassing degree. That said, of course, this is all on a continuum. So over here you've got an organisation that's completely free of cult red flags, and over here you've got a cult that an organisation that just completely fits all the destructive cult checkpoints, and then you've got something in the middle, anywhere along there. And so my experience was that, in some instances it's further along than others. And so, it's a shifting thing, which, makes it a little bit difficult for some people anyway to say specifically, oh yeah, it's definitely a destructive cult. Because it's not that black and white, There's a lot of good things in Rigpa. I mean, I wouldn't have stayed for 20 years. And I think we have to realise that the teachings were genuine and the teaching materials were genuine. The words of the Dharma were genuine. It was how they were practiced, how they were interpreted, and the fact that the compassion and the kindness in the teachings was not embodied, not only by our Lama, but also by the people who felt that they needed to cover all this up. You might not want to declare, yes, it's a cult, or no, it's not a cult, or I was in a cult, or I wasn't in a cult, or any of that. But I think we all need to be aware of just where we were slipping and sliding over the line. And this doesn't even mention information control, which really it should have been on here somewhere, because information control was a big thing. And again, after the letter by the 8 came out, it was then that I realised more than ever before, I mean, I never realised these things before then, just how much the information was controlled. And I mentioned before about only good things being able to be shared about Rinpoche, so that the only information you ever got at retreat about how people felt about Sogyal Rinpoche was all good. It was all good. You just didn't ever hear anything bad. And of course, you couldn't, in a Rigpa group, on a Rigpa online group, you could not say anything against Sogyal Rinpoche. You could not raise a question about this. You were just completely shut down. You were either abused by other people in the group, or usually you were abused first and then you were just removed from the group. I'm still not allowed to comment on Sogyal Rinpoche's Facebook page, and I was cut out just for asking a question. I guess they thought it was rude, but I didn't think it was rude. But anyway, The point being that information is tightly controlled and discussions tightly controlled, and there were certain attachments sent out from management just after this broke, and the only things on the attachment were things that basically supported this idea that Rinpoche was a crazy wisdom master, and therefore, whatever he did to you was absolutely fine. None of the material, none of the articles that came out where people said, no, abuse is not a teaching method, none of that was shared, at least not in Australia. This information control is definitely there. As I said, nobody sets out to join a cult. People are in cults because they think that they have the truth, that they have the ultimate truth. And yes, I think Tibetan Buddhism does have the ultimate truth there, in the Dzogchen and the Mahamudra. I don't think you can beat that. The wisdom there, the truth of that, is absolutely and completely undeniable. And that is why this is so, so dreadful. So, are you in a cult? If you can accept that, there was some, at least some cult-like behaviour going on there, then you can look at the recovery literature and start to go through the process that's required for you to integrate your experience into your life so that you can move on. And I'll be looking at that more in coming videos. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope that you gained some benefit from this, because even though some of you think that I'm probably a really evil person, my intention is actually to be of benefit, to help other people who are facing the same thing, to come to understand what exactly was going on and where things went wrong. And we haven't even got to looking at examining the beliefs yet. So that's it for today. Catch you next time.